Where is your value for like stability and consistency? And did you have that in entrepreneurship before you went into corporate?
Yes and no. I had just started to hit a stride, like within the last maybe like 6 months of entrepreneurship. And actually, I really hate that word. I hate the word like entrepreneurship. I hate the word entrepreneur. And I really feel like low-key a fraud when I use it, because I feel like when you're running a business and it's just you and maybe an assistant or a couple other employees, like if you're still working in the business, like you're not really an entrepreneur. You're really more like you're self-employed. But I did have a level of stability with that because your performance always just dictates your pace.
Those eye rolls. If y'all are listening to this episode, the eye rolls were real.
Sorry.
So I know that you'll agree, enjoying myself while I work is the vibe that I'm trying to be on. So I want to invite you guys to Sidebar ATL here in Atlanta, Georgia. Sidebar, on top of the good food and live music, they have 3 different experiences. That means you can join me in the garden room, in the gold room if you want to try the top of the line hookah, and they also have the dungeon where I hear what happens in the dungeon stays in the dungeon. So it's the perfect mix. If you're here on business or you want to blow off some steam after work, you can meet me at Sidebar ATL so that you can have a little bit of dinner and then turn up afterwards if that's your jam. So check us out, 79 Poplar Street here in downtown Atlanta, or you can call 678-800-0741. Let's get it. Work and play at the same time, right? Welcome to the Work and Play podcast. I'm your host, Ariel, and we have a really cool guest today. I think she's family because you never know with Ancestry.com. Listen, we have Miss Joy Young here to join us today.
Young and young.
Young and young. So wait, when I met you, you were... Oh, we met at a mutual friend's party.
A Victoria's party, yeah.
And as we were talking, you were talking about like your rebrand, your personal rebrand, and then you also were talking about like your entrepreneurial endeavors. I think it was then that I got really like connected to you, and I was like, "Ooh, I gotta talk to her." It was like that was lit. Now, soon after, you were like, "Girl, my story is shifting," and that's when you took that job at corporate. So let's start there.
Well, the timeline is just a little off because when we met, I had already taken my corporate job, but I was already starting to have doubts. And that was maybe about 4 months into me having a corporate job. And so at the 6-month mark, I just realized that it wasn't really for me. But it was really interesting because, like I was telling you before, I've been in some capacity an entrepreneur, or had like an entrepreneurial sense, because I always worked in sales. I ran my web design agency, but I started to get randomly, I got 3 job offers within like 2 weeks. And I don't even have a LinkedIn, y'all. I know it's sad, but no LinkedIn. No LinkedIn, no resumes posted anywhere. But I'm a strong believer in your network is your net worth. And so, when people are looking for roles to fill, they're going to check with their colleagues, they're going to check with their associates and see if anybody has recommendations. And it just so happened that I got 3 job offers. And so I said, after the first one, whatever. But after the 3rd one, it's like, okay, maybe this is a sign. Maybe I should start to consider it. And entrepreneurship is stressful. And number one. so it was the possibility of like having like a nice like reprieve, like just a break away from the stresses of it. Yeah. And then especially with just with like COVID and everything that was going on, and it just seemed like perfect timing because my assistant was out with COVID for like 4 weeks, and so I was already like getting behind with stuff. And they say never have a single point of failure, but I only had her. I didn't have a backup, and it was kind of like, ugh. And she was kind of underperforming anyway. So I'm like, ooh, I could just kind of like offload her. I can, everybody else I worked with were more like contractors, like photographers, other designers. So it wasn't a huge transition to kind of like finish up my clients and let them go and just explore these other opportunities. Like I said, that didn't last long. Didn't last long.
But that's the thing. And I want to jump right into that because one of the things, I didn't know that you hadn't had another corporate job. Like that 6 months of a time span in corporate was enough for you to know, like, this is not for me. But a lot of times you hear a lot of people going from corporate, they've been in corporate their entire career, and then they have to decide a new, develop a new relationship with entrepreneurship. Now for you, what are your, like, so where is your value for like stability and consistency? And did you have that in entrepreneurship before you went into corporate?
Yes and no. I had just started to hit a stride, like within the last maybe like 6 months of entrepreneurship. And actually, I really hate that word. I hate the word like entrepreneurship. I hate the word entrepreneur. And I really feel like low-key a fraud when I use it, because I feel like when you're running a business and it's just you and maybe an assistant or a couple other employees, like if you're still working in the business, like you're not really an entrepreneur. You're really more like you're self-employed. But I did have a level of stability with that, because your performance always just dictates your pay. So it's like, if I need to make some money, then I can hustle. If I want to chill, then I can. And so it was stable in the sense of like, I know how to get it if I want it. And if I don't want to work for too much, I don't need to, kind of thing. And it was stable in a sense of, based on history, if I invest this much in ads, or if I invest, this much time in writing my emails or posting on social media, I am for sure going to get 10 leads or 20 leads or 7 leads or whatever. The math works out. It's just a math game. But the appeal of corporate, like I said, it felt like a sign, number one, because I got all of these offers at once, and they were all like corporate or like tech startups. So, and even when you're working with like a tech startup, when you have $12 million in funding, like it's not really operating like a traditional startup. It's gonna be have the same kind of corporate structure,
politics and all that.
But when I got those job offers, like I said, it felt like a sign. And then I had always been curious. Like, I feel like in my life, I have not had a lot of the traditional experiences. Like, didn't have a traditional college experience because I went to college for a couple years and was like, all of my friends are broke. I work in sales. Why do I need to go to college? I'm making more money than everybody.
Why are we doing this?
Why are we doing this? Right. And this was like, I never had the traditional college experience. I never had the experience of like working for corporate or like interviewing and like, I mean, I've had a lot of jobs, but like, not like
the
adult jobs.
And that's what's so cool about it. Like, hearing your perspective on things, it's like usually we're talking about letting go of that comfort and letting go of the 2 week, like not the 2 weeks, but the direct deposit, and like these are things that a lot of people who transition from corporate into entrepreneurship have to let go. What were some of the things that you had to let go in order to navigate into a space of structure?
Not being able to do things my way, like not being able, not do things my way. The biggest thing was not being in control of my time. Like, even though I work from home, I was just really surprised at like the demands of a corporate job, of like checking in with my boss, and like, I operate on deadlines with my clients, but it's kind of like, if I say it's going to be done on Wednesday the 12th, it might be done on Tuesday the 11th. It may be done on Wednesday the 12th at 10 p.m. It may be done a week before. Like, it's going to get done on time, but don't call me at 12 talking about why is it not here. Like, I don't know. Or, it's like, I'm going to get in trouble if like my boss calls me, and instead of being in front of my computer, I'm like getting my nails done at 2:00 in the afternoon, which is what I do. Or, I have a friend coming into town and I want to grab brunch with her at 1:00 in the afternoon. Those are traditional work hours. And I just felt like it was really impeding on my life. And I just feel like you spend so much of your time at work. That's a big part of your life. Like, I want to have a little bit more control over my time, because for me, that's the most valuable resource. Like, you can't get your time back. Like, I can spend all my money and I can make it back tomorrow, but what are you gonna do when you spend your life with no control? And it's just, I just don't want to live a life of regret. And I'm just like, dang, if I want to take a trip on a Wednesday, y'all gonna be calling me at 11 a.m. talking about why are you on a plane and not in front of your computer?
Yeah. Are you still trying to get a leg up on your entrepreneurial career? Now, I told you about the morning meetup, the community that was created for the betterment of entrepreneurship. And we are cooking up some really cool things. Now, here's the thing. If you join today, you can actually get in for 60% of the original price. So if you join today, all you have to do is download the app, and I provided the link below so that you can join us. We have community, we have a book club, and it's the largest group that meets every single day, Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. to literally get a head start on entrepreneurship. So if you're still trying to grow, you don't know what your business is going to be, but you know you want to be an entrepreneur, this is the community for you. So check out the morning meetup, click the link below, download the app, and join us today. So it's the life freedom for you. It's the freedom for me.
It is, you know, and I never realized that before. I heard this theory that humans basically have 4 main motivations for like making money and excelling in their career, and that's the thing that like drives them when things get hard. And some say it's like freedom of time, freedom of location, freedom to do what you want. 2 is like love, sex, and relationships. So like, why do you want to make money? So you can be cute and catch a mate, you know? Or is it for, you know, status and recognition? You want to thrive and you want to make a lot of money because you want to walk into a room and people be like, you know, that's the man or the woman. And the 4th one is material things. Like, I want to live in a nice place and drive a nice car and wear nice clothes. So those are usually the main 4 motivations. And a lot of times they would say like, oh, test your motivations, like what trumps what. And sometimes use the example like, if you couldn't leave your hometown or wherever you live right now for 5 years, but you made all the money that you wanted, or you couldn't leave your city for 5 years, if you want to live in this place, or you can't leave your city for 5 years if you want to have love. And so you kind of balance those two. And depending on your answers will determine like what your main motivations were. But anyway, I say all of that to say I used to think that my main motivation was like, you know, just like a life of like luxury and convenience. Like, I like to live in a nice place and drive a nice car and like you know, order Uber Eats and stuff. Like, that's just like the convenient life that I want. And then, you know, I'm like, the secondary motivation is love, and not just like love in a sense of like, you know, romantic, but like love in a sense of like, I like to host game nights. You know, I like to go on dating is my favorite pastime though. Don't get me wrong. So I was like, I don't care. I would be on I don't have to go. No, I will let my passport expire. I do not care, because I would rather, live in a nice place. If my home is comfortable, I'm cool. I don't need to be on nobody's beach because my house is my sanctuary. But I was wrong, obviously, because that was the main reason why I left corporate, not having that freedom to do. And then I had to be pissed when they'd be like, oh, we need you to come into the office in 2 hours. And I'm like, I did not plan on doing that today. So now I got to, you know, stop my plans and go, even though it wasn't far from my house. But the point is, it's like, dang, you can just call me when you need me. Yeah. I got to stop what I'm doing, come in, and I got to answer every phone call, every text. I can't take a nap when I want. Like,
yeah, so it's really the life. So what is the work? What is the difference in the type of work? So you were hired into corporate to do graphic designing as well? No,
and this was another reason why I took this job particularly, because it was a role that I felt like was stretching me beyond my current capabilities. And I mean, even though I was there for a short time, I did take a lot away from that. But my position was director of operations. And so I got hired on with the skincare company that was going through, you know, their own
reorganization?
Yeah, business model transition, because they were transitioning to like a franchise model. So, you know, me coming in as director of operations, you know, my job was really to like tighten up all of their processes, and with me having a lot of experience on the tech side, on the back end, is like, I'm going to build all of your systems. I'm going to build all of your automations. I'm going to build your employee portal. I'm going to, make you a centralized, basically software application where you can run your whole business through. So when you have franchises, they can log in and they can see statuses and just everything that you need to do. And that was a big...
That sounds really cool.
Yeah, it was a huge project from a technological perspective. But then it's also like, as director of operations, they're like, because you are basically recreating our whole operation system, like, you have to be in charge of the people too, to let them know what to do and where to go. So that was the motivation, because I was like, this would look so good on my resume if I ever do, and not even like if I ever decide to get another job, but just like as validation.
Credibility.
Yeah, if I wanted to sell, grow this company or sell it, or maybe I don't know, but just having like director of operations for, the skincare company. And then I'm thinking about like, okay, this company does, X amount of money per year. When they bring me on board, like, I already, like, cause I could see, just like looking at their operations, I'm like, if y'all just tightened up a little bit,
right,
your revenue could explode. And so, just kind of from a selfish perspective, like, this would be so good. And then, the satisfaction of like building something that's a little like beyond your scope of capability, but not so far that you're gonna like crash and burn, but it was a nice challenge. And then it's like, you do that and you can get paid for learning, basically.
Exactly.
And
So let's talk about that. So you, first of all, you went into the opportunity. Yeah, you said selfish, but honestly and truly, you were thinking, I'm going to 10x or I'm going to XX whatever their operations, their sales, their costs, whatever. And so you actually had a goal of transforming their office space. So even though it was going to look good on your resume, so to speak, like, it was going to really truly have an impact. Now, the thing that I feel I've experienced in roles is you go in with these like really cool ideas of how you're going to execute. So outside of like the life, imbalance, when you got on the role, what was it like? Like, what did impact truly feel like on a day-to-day basis? Those eye rolls. If y'all are listening to this episode, the eye rolls were real. Sorry. The best way to support the Work and Play podcast is by subscribing to the YouTube channel and by going to your favorite podcast player to subscribe and rate the Work and Play podcast. That's all you have to do. So if you are liking the Work and Play podcast, the content, the stories that we're sharing, and you know that this will help someone, go ahead and share the content to someone who could actually use it and help them on their journey to transition from corporate into entrepreneurship. Now let's get back into the episode.
Sorry, because and this is something that I hear a lot, and it is a lot my fault too for not really reviewing my contracts and being really like clear on what my job role was, and just like just things that you should have like looked out for before you sign on a dotted line. But my role had a much larger scope than I was anticipating, and just, it really don't even have anything to do with corporate per se, but just that particular position. I just didn't feel like I was being effective as I wanted to be, because I'm like, I am only one person, and even if I'm working 60 hours a week, like, building a software on the back end takes a lot of time. And now you want me to be managing the staff, you want me to be making the schedule, you want me to, be hiring folks and doing interviews. And I understand that the role director of operations entails a lot, but I feel like they oversold the company to me, oversold their financial viability. Number one, like, that was a big reason that I left, because I'm like, this business is a house of cards, and I'm not going to be here when y'all collapse. And no wonder I don't have the support that I have, and y'all are making all these excuses why I don't have the support, but it's because y'all don't have the money. Yeah. And they felt like hiring me was going to be a Band-Aid for all of their problems, because they're like, oh, Because I mean, first of all, like coming from entrepreneurship, like you gotta pay me well, like so you know they're like, you know, they use like a big chunk of money for my salary, but then thought that I was supposed to be superwoman and do everything, and it's like I still need support, you know, a mid-level support besides just like the other subordinates that are working. So I just couldn't be effective. Like hiring takes so much time, so if I'm like spending a week trying to hire 4 people and doing interviews and all of this stuff, like
you're not spending time doing the technical work.
And
is that what you enjoy most?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm a good manager of people, but it's just a lot sometimes dealing with just the headaches that come with people. Like just, you know, even stuff like when people are tardy, like we got a business to run, come on. You know what I'm saying? And it's not even necessarily like the interaction of people or like managing people, but it's like, you know, that just adds, you know, you got 10 employees, that adds 10 more, you know, elements that you have to keep spinning correctly. And, you know, the reason that they brought me in for operations because their operations were so messed up. So it's like, I'm trying to build the system while y'all are still like, I'm trying to fix it as y'all are still using it, and build something new, and you know, manage the employees. It was just a lot.
I got you. So in the 6 months, and honestly and truly, I'm thinking about the there's a book called 90 Days, and I cannot remember who it's by. It's this big green book, and I just can't remember the author of it.
I don't know.
It's like one of the like best books if you want to succeed in a transition within corporate, because there's so many different politics, so many different personalities. It works for like large corporations, but then it, like as you mentioned, the politics and the structure and the seed money that's going into the startup, it's just making me think about the navigation that you would have had to do to like be successful in that role and play to the politics, as opposed to doing the technical work, which it sounds like you didn't get a chance to do so much of that. So, and then also you mentioned that the role that they offer, and which happens a lot, kind of like, you know, bait and switch, right?
Exactly, that's exactly it.
Girl, I want to go into your dreamer mind though, because as entrepreneurs we dream. You also said problem solving, which I definitely want to touch on as well. And maybe in this response you can share on both. Like as an entrepreneur, you are a problem solver, but we're also like dreamers, and we're like, I want to do this great and wonderful thing, and I'm gonna blow it out of the water. So you're thinking you're gonna save them, you know, X amount of money in doing a project. When you went in, what was the number one problem that you were like, I know I could solve this? And what was the project, or what did you think? How did you think you were gonna solve it?
The number one project when I went in, probably. I'm like, where to start? I'm trying to recall my list, because I'm like a spreadsheet queen and like organized queen. And so it's like when I came in, I did have like, this is what we need to hit first, second, third, fourth, fifth, because it was just so much. But I think number one was just getting some of the newer employees like trained up right. So it's like the few systems that y'all do have in place, the employees aren't even adhering to them. So it's like they might as well not even be here. So it's like, let's, you know, get them trained up right, and let's get some like written policies and procedures so that people can know how to do their jobs and know how to operate within this organization effectively. And then we can build off of those systems. But it's like, if you're not even gonna follow those, so that was like number one. And then number two was just a lot of it ended up being a second priority, even though coming in I didn't, that really wasn't what I was planning on. But just like, you know, some marketing stuff and making sure we're staying on top of emails and making sure we're staying on top of customer service. It was stuff like, if nobody answers the phone after the third ring, like it would just go to like somewhere, I don't know.
Gotcha. So there was no like process of like, who is the first runner up for this phone call?
Well, I mean, it was, but it's like, if, first of all, it was just a lot. But it's kind of like if nobody answers the phone or if there's a missed call, then it's like, who's going back to retrieve that call? Or what if you're on the other line and somebody's on the other line and another call comes through? Like, what happens to it? And it just like, you just like lost that call or you lost that lead, you know? So like me going in, I'm like, at the very least, we got to look professional. So, you know, I like got them like a new phone system and then like kind of got like a rerouting system. But then it's like, we're kind of short staffed when I came on board. So it's like, okay, if nobody answers the phone after the fourth ring, like you don't just want it to die, so then it's going to ring my cell phone, but then I should not have put that on myself. So now I'm answering the phone too when people are calling in, and I'm answering emails and just lower level stuff that was like detracting from like my main like vision for the company. And it was like I was stuck doing some lower level stuff because y'all don't have money to hire people.
Okay.
Because you spent all the money on my salary, but I just don't feel like that was a good move on their part.
Got you. Investment in terms of what exactly they needed. But it sounds like, and we haven't even gotten to the chunk of like the part that you probably enjoyed. The first two parts took so much because you have to get the infrastructure together before you can do the cool work. So it sounds like hiring you as a consultant to like say, hey, these are the things that we need to implement would have been a better investment of their like money, as opposed to hiring a role where this person would have done the implementation and the consulting of what needs to be done.
Exactly.
As an entrepreneur, I feel like what best suits you for like this role, as so far as we've like talked about, is because like as being self-employed, being entrepreneurs, we have to do all these different things in our business anyway. So is the fact that you've been a solo entrepreneur and you've operated your own business the reason you decided to go operations? Because so much of my like thought would have been like, you were going to go in there and be like, listen, you need a GUI like this. You need web pages like this. You need design.
See, I'm not really, I mean, it's easy to just say web designer because that doesn't require a lot of explanation. But in reality, web design is a small part of what I do, but it's more so what is on the forefront that people see. But when clients hire me, they hire me basically to build out their like business infrastructure.
Okay.
So it's like, I'm not just building their website, but it's like, I mean, I am, but like on the back end of their website, all of their processes are like being funneled through that website and everything's integrated. So they can just log in and they can see everything they need to see and do everything they need to do, set up all the automation, set up, you know, all the emails or whatever. So if you're like a service-based business, or say you're like a contract-based business, you know, instead of sending out contracts, you know, having to log into this website to send out a contract here, and then they need to pay the invoice somewhere else, and then, you know, when leads come in, it's just a mess. And a lot of my clients, they come to me because they've been, you know, running their businesses for 4 or 5 years, and they're so overwhelmed with like all of the paperwork or all of the manual stuff, or they are constantly losing passwords and they have no systems and they're overwhelmed. So I take all of those parts and I put them together and I organize them, so then it just rolls, and then they're like, oh my God, I spend way less time on just the tedious stuff, and I can really stop focusing so much on like running my business and because I'm the only person that kind of likes like I said, I love spreadsheets. I love like
I can see
administrative kind of stuff. But most people are like, I don't want to do this. But it's important. But it's like, okay, if we set up an automation, so when you get, you know, when somebody does pay your contract, then instead of having to drop what you're doing and send off a custom or whatever, we're going to set it up so then it automatically, you know, goes out. And then this you know, this payment has already been updated into your accounting software. So whoever does your bookkeeping, you know, you don't have to go through and manually do whatever. So it's just streamlining everything. Gotcha. And so when this company was looking for essentially that role, but on a bigger scale, and the fact that I've been kind of like wearing all the hats, so they like the fact that I worked in sales as well. That's why I said the scope of it was so much larger. Yes. Because they're like, we want you to do operations, but we also want you to increase our sales. And since you have a strong background in like sales psychology, we're going to want you to implement that in like our copy.
That's interesting.
And it just was a lot.
It really is, because I understand that you actually do have the capacity, meaning like the wherewithal, but then like the capacity of doing that for a whole startup, that's a completely different thing. And so to be hiring someone for the sales capacity and the operations capacity, that doesn't make any sense in like a hiring decision, and that's really terrible. But then also it makes sense on this side of things, because now I understand, though you say web designer, you are essentially like helping someone get their processes in place, because through that funnel, and the way that you described it was awesome. Through that funnel, though they're coming to you, they might be looking for a nice website. It's like, yeah, honey. But in order for it to work the way you want, you actually have to have all this stuff in the back. So in terms of your client transformations, and I'm also curious, like, if for you and your business identity, like if it started off as one thing and now it's web designer, as your client transformations have changed.
It has been pretty much this from the beginning, but it has just gotten just a lot better, because I got into it, like I said, years ago. I used to just do it like as a hobby, like just as something to do, just as a hobby, and just to get like a little bit of those technical skills. But yeah, maybe about like 6 years ago or so, I really just wanted to get out and like do some traveling, and I had a plan to take like a cross country year-long road trip. Oh, nice. And like I just wanted to do some traveling, but I'm like, okay. And I just kind of had to reverse engineer how I was going to make that happen.
Got you.
So yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm there. So sometimes my light bulb comes on, because you're so, as I'm listening and I'm getting to know you, you're very much work to live personality, and you're like, okay, so this is the life I want. How am I going to do that?
Exactly.
Let me back into a career that's going to allow me to do that. That's the reason the light bulb just went off. I'm there.
And I just I literally sat down and I just like took inventory of my skills. And I was like, which one of my skills are the most monetizable? Is that a word, monetizable?
I'm following you. I'm following.
So I mean, I was just like, I can do web design. I can do that from anywhere. And yeah, that's it. So, I just started going through. I already had like some, in my portfolio per se, and I just every time I got a new client, I would just charge like $50 more, $100 more. So then I'm like, I'll stop charging more when they start balking at my prices. But as you just get practice and then you learn other things, and then in the beginning, I was pretty much just taking any client that came my way, any referrals I was getting, any whatever, I was just taking them. And then, as you do enough of them, you first of all realize like what kind of clients you like, what kind of clients you don't like. But then you start seeing like patterns emerge, like they're having the same kind of problems. And then, because I was working with like startups, but then I was also working with like, kind of established businesses that needed a change. And then again, I looked at like, which one do I want to go for? Do I want to continue working with startups, or do I want to do something else? Because again, like, which one is going to give me the most bang for my time, or most buck for my time? And so it's like, so I ended up really focusing more so on people that already had established businesses that had been open for like 5 or so years, because they have a good understanding of like what is necessary. They work with like more of a sense of urgency, and they tend to have more money. And I realized like the higher prices that I charge, the less lower maintenance clients come my way. Like, when you charging, when your prices are cheap, you attract like cheap people, and then they're like, little $500, they feel like you're ripping out their soul, and they're calling you 20 times a day. And like, I felt like, oh, sorry, I don't mean to yell. I felt like my corporate job was a high maintenance client. And had I had more of a conversation with the owner who hired me about like what the job would entail, and like what they expected as far as like a level of communication and all of that stuff, I would have declined. Because at this point, if you even give me a whiff of being a high maintenance client, I'm not taking you on as a client, because I don't need that stress. I don't need that stress in my life. Listen, you hire me because I am a professional. You enjoy my work. Like, I don't need for you to be high maintenance. Like, do what you need to do, pay me on time, and we will have our scheduled meetings, and you will be happy with your product. And otherwise, let me do what I do. Let me do my process, because you hired me for a reason. And I felt like my corporate job was so, it was a lot of micromanaging too. And it just, I mean, it was like a lot of little things, but you know, they say, there's this just one-liner that like always haunts me, but death by 1,000 cuts. So it's like, I know that it's like a lot of like little things, but like little things add up, you know?
Absolutely. And let me just tell you, I resonate 100% with everything you just said. I was literally just having breakfast with a friend of mine this morning, and I was saying, you know, I like being an entrepreneur, because when you ask me to do something, if it's a client work or whatever, it could be a database, which I really don't enjoy doing. But I'm going to put all the bells and whistles on it, because that's just my work ethic. I'm going to, like, let me show you what I did. Let me show you. Right. But there's something that diminishes my excitement when all of a sudden I have a manager who's like, I need this, this, and this. And all of a sudden I'm like, do I actually want to? It just somehow depletes my energy for or joy for doing it. So 100% I get it. It might not make sense to someone who's like, just do the work, just get it done, who's good with the protocol, who's like thrives on responsibility or that type of environment, but it can be very draining, and you cannot enjoy life. Even the menial tasks that you could do as an entrepreneur, once you have somebody like breathing down your neck. So I 100% get it, and I think even in our society, we don't have the language to speak about it without sounding like a whiny millennial.
I know.
But I do believe that there is something to be said about like the work ethic that you have as an entrepreneur versus the work ethic that you have when like people expect your life to look a certain way. When all you need to be worried about is the deliverable.
Exactly. And that's what I used to, I mean, that was like my main sentiment. Like, you hired me for a reason. And I understand that it was like a little bit of insecurity, because they were not used to paying someone as much as they were paying me, and so it was just like kind of like all eyes on me. And it's not that I like don't thrive under pressure, because I've always been a performer, not in the sense of even like work, but like sports and theater. Like, I'm not scared of pressure, but it's more so just like killing my morale. Like, let me, you know, let me do what I do. That's what I'm doing. What I do.
So I want to get into so much of your story, but I'm still curious about this journey, this 6-month stint, right? 6-month stint. Going in, right? Being a free bird, as I like to think of it, and then going in. A lot of times people experience like their personal insecurities, right? Or limiting beliefs around that. Did you have any limiting beliefs going into it about you being able to keep up with the pace or being in that environment? No, absolutely not. And I say absolutely not. I love to use the word absolutely or absolutely not, because that is final. That is like, you know, I feel like language is important. The words that you use, they're important. And I think that, you know, I always say this. I just like love the process of getting older, because I just feel like I'm like wiser and like much more like self-aware. And I went into it knowing that it was a stretch of my capabilities, but at no point in time did I ever have like imposter syndrome or anything like that, because I have taken on the identity of somebody who can learn anything. And so like when I make mistakes and stuff, it doesn't like, you know, hurt my ego or my self-confidence. It's kind of like, okay, now I know, now I know it doesn't work. And so I didn't have, like, I felt like, I just feel like you can do anything, you can learn anything, Like, that is what is amazing about, like, us humans versus any other animal. Like, we are the ones that have, like, consciousness. We are the ones that have, like, forethought, and we are the only creature that, like, simulates the future. So it's like, if I am encountering a problem, then I can kind of like work through it mentally before I work through it physically. And, you know, you can pull from podcasts you listen to or the books that you read or your own personal experience to kind of like, you know, craft a game plan. And it's kind of like, if it don't work, it don't work. And
I love that. It'll work next time. And if it don't work next time, like, you know, I just don't feel like I'm incompetent. So it's like, it's not like I feel like I was going to be in there making stupid mistakes. So that's why I'm like, you know, it doesn't rattle me. That's good. But I am realizing that a lot of people don't have that mindset, so it's hard to sometimes get feedback, and that actually led to like the dissolution of the relationship with the corporate job I was with. Just you know, the owners were just very not able to take feedback, not even criticism, but just like feedback. But that's I'm diverting at this point. I got you.
At this point, you're realizing, hey, these are the things that the company can actually do, and you're sharing it from your perspective, but you feel like they didn't necessarily receive your advice on how things can be better. And though you didn't go in with any like thoughts of incompetency or inadequacy, you probably came in more solution oriented.
Of course.
It's like they were thinking, I'm not even sure what they were thinking. A lot of times people get mentally, especially when you're the owner, like you're emotionally tied to the business.
Exactly.
So you might not even be able to hear constructive criticism at some point. So I get both sides 100%. I am curious about your time or your decision to actually leave. I left before I left corporate, I took a new role and I quit 5 months in.
Oh,
so hearing your story, and I talk about this all the time. I'm like, you know, your next job does not have to be forever, but for some reason, when we put in that new job and we get a job, it's like I can't leave after 5 months. It's gonna look terrible on my resume, and and I don't know how to unshackle 100% that from a person who's like been corporate their entire life. But what I can say is, you know, it's okay for you to change your mind. And that's one of the things that I say for people who are just used to corporate. You are making a decision to go in and go out. So what were the emotional things or mental things that you were going through to help you like make your decision, or was it like super quick?
Well, no, it was I was agonizing about like whether I was going to leave or whether I was going to stay, for one. And I also feel like I like low-key manifested the like the negativity on which like I left the company.
Okay.
But I was agonizing because I already saw that the owners did not, and the board, like nobody took feedback well. So it's like, how am I going to navigate even leaving, you know, because you have to be like honest. Like if they say like, why are you leaving? Like, you know, but anyway.
Yeah, no, it sounds like you were thinking through like the navigating the relationships, trying to keep certain things intact, wanting to be truthful, hold your integrity, but then also, I guess, set your boundaries, because you're like, what am I going to say if they ask me?
Yeah. And then, you know, I really wanted to, I felt like I understood that it was a lot of other things that the job entailed, but I really wanted to finish the big project, the big technical project, which was, you know, integrating all of the systems and overhauling their like operational system. And when I walked into the job initially, I thought that it was going to take me like, you know, maybe 3 or 4 months. But at 6 months in, I was only halfway done because I was just inundated with, you know, so many other tasks. And that's why I was like, I just don't feel like I could be as effective on like really what needs to be done, because before you can franchise, you need systems. Like then you can't, this is the bare minimum if you want to open up the next 10 locations. This is the absolute bare minimum. But like I said, I felt like, you know, I was getting pulled away. And so I was really agonizing over it, because I was like, first of all, I don't know how, because I'll start from the end and then I'll back up. So basically, you know, I went to the board and I was just like, I really want to see this company succeed, and I really want us to hit our goals. And if we are going to hit our goals, I need to finish this software. We need to, you know, hire these next 3 people, and then whatever. But this is what needs to be the priority. And like I said, I'm not able to be effective. I need, and I had, and I guess in retrospect, I guess I could have presented it differently.
What do you mean?
Because they took it as an ultimatum. I was basically like, and and maybe this is just my attitude too. And I swear I didn't go in with this attitude, but I mean, it is my underlying attitude, but it's kind of like, I don't need this job.
Got you. So the opposite of desperation is here. It's like, listen, this is what y'all need to fix.
Yeah, basically it's like, I want to be effective, and I am not, because also it was approaching the time in my contract that's like I start to get like revenue share. And so it was like, first of all, okay, I low-key took a pay cut taking this corporate job, but the possibility of the offer of getting like stock options, which the value will directly depend on my performance. I'm like, it's sales 2.0. So it was like, okay, I'll take a little bit of a pay cut on the front end with my salary, because I know once I hit 6 months in, then I'll get stock options. But the way that it was structured was kind of like, it was all based on like revenue growth. Okay. So I'm like, if I am not able to do the job that I need to do in order to grow this revenue, then I'm gonna continue taking a pay cut. And I'm like, because those bonuses and those stock options, that would have supplemented
the money that you were making.
Exactly. But it's like, if I can't be effective and if I can't do these things that I know are going to increase sales, then financially it doesn't motivate me.
Interesting.
So that was kind of like the thing. So it was also like, and I knew I was approaching that 6-month mark, and around 5 months, I'm like, okay, what am I gonna do? So am I gonna stay? Am I gonna leave? I don't really wanna and that was the other part. I was like, I don't really wanna leave with this project being unfinished, because if nothing else came out of that job, I was like, I am gonna have a really good piece of
intellectual property.
Yeah, or not even that, but just like, it just was a big project that I could have shown off, and it just would have been like, I feel like having that in my quote unquote portfolio, that huge project, would have just been really validating for other companies if I wanted to get like bigger projects and contracts. And so, again, selfishly, I'm like, ooh, if I leave, then I'm going to leave that project half finished, and then it's going to kind of feel like a waste of time for the last 6 months for me to basically leave this job empty-handed. And I can't really say empty-handed because I was getting a salary and stuff, but like I said, my time is more important than my money. So I'm like, I really felt like I kind of wasted 6 months, because what I really came to do, my big pride and joy project, was not able to be fulfilled.
It's like working on a one-on-one client and not getting the testimonial, or not getting the transformation, or you not staying long enough for me truly to. I totally get it.
So I was like, ooh, should I stay, a little longer, even though, that's going to mean that I'm not really going to get as much money in bonuses, but it's like, I really don't want to spend another 6 months in here, not being effective.
Spinning your wheels.
Yeah, so I want to be able to have a conversation to kind of change some things, so that, because what I learned also, when you hire people, you want to make sure that their selfish motivations line up with the needs of the company.
Absolutely.
So my selfish motivations are, I want to make money, I want to finish this project because it's going to look good for me. But on the flip side, you want me to finish this project, and you want it because this is the bare minimum of what you need. And so it just seemed like a no-brainer for them to kind of take my feedback seriously. But I already knew that it wasn't. Like I said, I kept saying maybe I'm manifesting that. But I kind of already knew from the interactions that I already had from the higher ups that they were willing to go a little bit outside of the status quo, but it just was a lot of ego involved, and nobody wants to be wrong. Nobody wants to be maybe we did make a mistake by, doing X, Y, and Z. So anyway, I went to them and I said, okay, listen, I don't really think the way that this company is running as it is now is not a good fit for me for X, Y, and Z reasons. And I guess it is a little bit of ultimatum. I presented it a little more flowery than this, and I'm being succinct here. But I was kind of like, either we make these changes and I'll continue working for this company, or we don't. And if we don't, then this is my 4-week notice. I don't want to leave y'all like in a lurch, because I have my hands in a lot of things. And if I just up and leave, y'all gonna be screwed. So it's like, this will be my 4-week notice. I'll make sure I tie everything up really nicely for you. Even though the projects are unfinished, at least I'll leave you with like a workable product. Or you can submit to my requests and change, not even like change huge things, but just like let's change a few things.
What were some of the things that you needed to change? Because here's the thing. Remember, I'm really intrigued with this balance of you being an entrepreneur and going into this corporate space. Mm-hmm. One thing that you touched on was like the status quo, right? And as an entrepreneur, we're innovating all the time, especially because revenue depends on it, sales depend on it. So we have to innovate and things like that. And so you're going into this space and you're saying, hey, these are the things that you need to change. Now, as a consultant, it's one thing to get paid for the recommendations that, hey, you guys need to change this. And if you do it, you do it. You don't, you don't. But I'm sure as a consultant, you're like, I need you to change. Otherwise, I can't use this as a case study for my next client, right?
Yeah.
So, but then on this side, you are tied to the performance of the recommendations. So like, what are the recommendations like at a high level that you were suggesting?
Some even basic stuff like hiring somebody to do some specific roles, because it was a pattern that I noticed not just with my, what they hired me to do, but even with other people within the organization. You hire them to do one job, but then you want to pile like a few more job responsibilities, which is not their area of expertise. They're not efficient, they're not good at it, and then it's kind of like pay now or pay later, but you're gonna pay. So it's like you are either just gonna pay for the extra hands to do what you need to do, or you're gonna keep paying these same people to do it, and then it has to be redone. It just so we gotta have some defined roles about like who does what in this organization.
Got it.
I do not want to talk to y'all every day. Okay. Like at the very least, I will give you an email if you want to recap for the day, but I don't want you calling me at 8:00 at night, because and it was an expectation again, because like I'm director of operations, I'm supposed to be like fully dedicated to the job. Like, don't call me 8:00 on a Saturday night and expect me to answer, and don't get an attitude when I don't. Yeah. Or don't call me 3 times in a day. Like, what are you calling me for? What are you calling me for? Nonsense, just to check in. Like, okay. This is not important. And then like me personally, like I said, my phone is forever on do not disturb, because when I'm working, I don't want to be. It's on do not disturb because I don't want to be disturbed. So then, I make exceptions. For you have your favorites list. So I make exceptions to the actual studio. Like, so if like an employee is calling me, that's like, they're calling me because they got a problem or something needs to be addressed, which is already too much. But then I didn't put any of my higher ups on my allowed list when it's on do not disturb, because y'all are not calling me for any emergencies. So when I take my break, because I work in 90-minute spurts, and so I work for 90 minutes, I take a 20-minute break, I will call you in my 20-minute break. I will see the missed call. Like, nothing you're calling me for is like that urgent where I need to like break my focus and get out of my workflow, because you're not calling me for nothing urgent or important. I can call you in 30 minutes. But that was like a big deal. They're like, no. If we call and you're in the middle of something, you can just answer and say, I'll call you back. But I'm just like, you have now disturbed me.
So we might as well talk.
Yeah. And so it was like stuff like that. And then, some like accounting stuff, like we need to allocate, like I see the budget. So we need to allocate less money over here, more money over here. Like, they hired me in. So one of the benefits I felt like I said, I told you, I feel like they oversold me. one of the benefits I felt like coming to a bigger company with seemingly more money is that a lot of the things that I want to implement in my own business but are kind of expensive, but that will get you those, that much better results. I thought that I would have the access to implement some more things that are more expensive than I otherwise would have spent in. I mean, because this company is making 10 times my revenue that I was making in my business. So you would think that you have a lot more budget for some of these things. And so it's like they hire me on, but I tell them I'm kind of like it's like if you hire me to like build your kitchen, you still got to pay for the materials. So if you hire me to like, why do you think the budget ends at my labor? Like you have hard costs. You have costs for software. You have costs for security stuff. And it's like, it was like an arm and a leg getting them to pay for stuff that is necessary, let alone things like marketing, because, they would have their like front desk people, because it was a spa. So, they sold services on site, products online. And like I said, they wanted to expand to different markets. So I'm like, you have your front desk people in their downtime doing social media, but they are not social media people, and that's why you're not seeing traction in social media. So why don't you take some money away from your packaging budget, which is too much? Like, you don't have to do all of this for your packaging. Like, you could take some of that money and you can put it over here in marketing, and to hire. They just didn't allocate their budget well. And after seeing that budget, and then it was a COVID outbreak, because they sell products online, yes, but it's a local service-based businesses. So there was a week where the whole studio was shut down because every single employee that works locally got COVID at the same damn time. So all the appointments were canceled, and that means who does it fall on to fulfill orders now in the package of orders? Me, because I live 10 minutes down the street, and you think that it's my job to do everything, to pick up the slack for everybody.
And you showed up.
Of course I did. Of course I did. But it's like, you are not taking my suggestions to make this company viable. Like, you really can't afford to be shutting down the studio for 2 weeks. It's a major part of your revenue. And so we're in the age of COVID. So how about we allocate some more money to the online side of things?
I got you.
And for me, it just is so obvious. Yeah. Now I'm like ranting.
Well, you know what's funny though? And I think that as you were talking, yes, I said, let me let you get this energy out. I said, this energy needs to come out. But as you're talking, some of the times we're on jobs and we have a clear solution of what needs to be made in a company. You see that the process is messed up day in and day out. The difference between you and a company or an employee who's been there for 5 years, they see it happening over time, that to the point where they get desensitized to the problem. And this passion becomes, they're not doing it. And now you're just taking the check and you've accepted the status quo. So I let the energy come out because listen, we are in the age of rents, girl, #rent. But you were also given solutions that were really, really helpful. Now, given this energy that we're giving, I'm sure you went into the room and said like, hey, these are the things.
Of course.
And so as you were talking, and here's the thing, like when it's kind of emotional intelligence, when a person is expressing themselves, but you were giving some really good suggestions in terms of reallocating the budget, in terms of hiring like specialized hands, like doing these things. And also you're being very honest with your motivations of like, hey, if y'all implement these systems, these are things that
everybody's gonna make more money. It's so obvious.
Right, so you're being very honest. But this goes back to the very beginning of what you were telling the story about and it was you were agonizing with the decision to leave. So if I really like tie this up, there is somebody who's like, at first they started off agonizing to leave. It took them 6 months to be agonizing to leave, and then they didn't leave, and then they stayed for more years. So for you, what was the deciding factor for you actually to leave?
The deciding factor was, and it's so ridiculous that I was even agonizing over it for a month, because I made the decision the way I make all other big decisions, but I don't know why I was resistant to it, but I sat down with a piece of paper and drew a line down the middle. This is what happens if I stay. This is what happens if I go. And I listed all of the features and elements of both sides, and then I assigned them a number from -5 to +5, added them all up, and made my decision.
Come on with this spreadsheet, Lord.
And I think I was just agonizing because I really didn't want to ruin the relationship, because those people were like, you know, kind of influential people, and you know, but ultimately once I like released that, I was like, let me just take the emotional out of it. Like, really, let's quantify like what their influence really can be future-wise for me. And then I left. After that, it was like, all right, this is clear. Because honestly, I feel like sometimes we don't want to really know the truth. And because I was thinking to myself, like, what took me so long to sit down and do this exercise? Because it has never failed me. So it's like, why am I just thinking? Let me put it down on paper. But sometimes, you know, you kind of are suspicious about like what it's really gonna look like, or but when it was on paper, the quantities were so different, the sums were so different, like it was just kind of like a no-brainer. And you know, we were talking about earlier, never have a single point of failure. Like, I don't need this job.
You have options. Everybody has options, but they don't ever recognize them. And what I love, honestly and truly, I'm glad I let you rant, because let me tell you how quick it was for you to describe you leaving. It means you were so invested in that job, and you really, really, really wanted it to work.
I did.
And that is what I get from that. And for you to really, really, really get to the point where, you know what, let me sit down and see what's best for me. Boom. Took you a moment. I want to do that exercise, and I literally want to do that for my audience, for my clients, so that they can really like get all of it out.
Yeah.
All right, now let's make a decision.
It's like, I just feel like, and this is maybe just like my analytical brain, but I feel like the one truth that will, like, if you examine all of your other beliefs and you say, like, is it possible in 100 years it will turn out to be like not true? Like, say your political beliefs. Like, I may think like, you know, republicanism. I'm making up words today.
I love it.
Conservatism is the best way to run a government, right? That might be my strongest belief, but is it possible that in 100 years we really see that's not the best way? Like, you know, you might think communism is so bad, but is there any possibility? So if you like break down all of your beliefs, the only thing that's always going to remain the same is math. 2 + 2 is always going to be 4 in 100 years and 200 years and 1,000 years. You know, I'm not talking about theoretical imaginary numbers. 2 + 2 is always going to be 4. So when you like when you assign numbers to stuff, it's so clear it's not going to change. Like, and that has been a way I started making decisions. Like, once I learned about that theory or that like practice, maybe like probably like a decade ago now, like that's how I make decisions. That's how I made the decision to end my relationship. That's how I made the decision to end this job. This is how I made it's just, I mean, it's the best way. When I worked in sales, actually I used to kind of use that, like, not really as a manipulative practice, but like, sit down and figure it out. Like, do you think that this is the right car to buy? Do you think that this is the right house to buy?
Yes.
You know, and then it's clear.
So when you say manipulative, you said it wasn't, because essentially when they do the numbers for themselves, they make the decision based on...
It's manipulating them into making a faster decision. Like, come on.
Because they know what's good for them.
Yeah, because it's so clear.
You know you want it, so just make the decision. Like,
or maybe, you know, I mean, because when people agonize over stuff, like the indecision comes from like the fear of kind of like getting it wrong. So it's like, if you can write it down on paper and it's very, very clear, like if your score, like if you're adding up all the negatives and the positives and one score comes to 32 and the other one comes to 8, is like, I don't know why I thought this was so close. But then if it is closer, that's where you lean on like your counsel. You always want to have like people that you trust that you can go to for advice. But like 9 times out of 10, once you sit down and you quantify everything, there is going to be a stark difference between the two, and because it removes the emotion.
Yeah.
And so everything is scary until you just do it. So just make the decision and do it. But when you have the numbers in front of you, you can just be a little more confident with the decision that you make.
I love it. Thank you so much for that. In the spirit of, work and play, we got a lot of the work, and that really created work for you. But then there's a play side, and what really fascinates me is your journey. Like you mentioned, like your liberation from your relationship, and how you used the same decision-making process to like get in and out. But before we started the podcast, you said that your relationship with him was it was a deciding factor of taking the job as well as leaving the job. Did I get that right?
Yeah. As much as I that relationship was really painful for me, like emotionally, because I thought I was going crazy in it. Like it was a lot of like manipulation and like just like emotional abuse. Like it was never like cheating or like physical abuse, but like it was like soul sucking. But in that relationship, it forced me, and sometimes I'm like, oh, why do we have to go through these experiences? But when I try to turn my anger into gratitude, this is what I come up with. And in that relationship, I reached a level of self-awareness that I never knew before. Like I really understood like what I liked, what I didn't like, what's important to me, what triggered me, what didn't. Like, it forced me to let go a lot of my ego. Like this whole idea of like being right all the time. Like it's okay if you're wrong. Like this whole idea of like making bad decisions. Like it's okay. This whole idea of like you don't have to agree with me. And these ideas that you just realize that certain traits, they compound. And when I am I just realized that like it just gave me a level of self-awareness. And so maybe some things about the job that I didn't like I said, death by 1,000 cuts. Some of those little cuts, maybe before I kind of would have like tried to gaslight myself, like it's not that bad. Like like you can make it work. But now at this point it's like it may not be that bad to you, but it's affecting my quality of life.
Got you. So the gratitude comes from you being in an exercise of a relationship that really pushed you to your limits, and then you realizing, now my sensitivity is a little bit higher. I always equate like in our relationships, when we start to feel like we're crazy, like a frog boiling in the hot water, and we realize, this is getting hot, and we're like, no, I got to get out of here. So the self-awareness that you're talking about, listen, it don't take me a year to figure out this is not a good fit. And so that's what kind of contributed to you being able to leave in 6 months. I get what you're saying.
Because I would have, because it was also like, and I am, it's a few words that I hate. I hate the word entrepreneur because people overuse it. But I also hate the word narcissist. Everybody wants to like throw around the word like narcissist, but I believe my ex was a textbook narcissist. But I'm not saying that like the bosses and higher ups were narcissists per se. I'm not saying that at all, actually. But you do realize these personality traits that just aren't going to change. And so it's like, when I sat down and had that meeting with them, like the big meeting that's like, listen, this is what we need to do. This wasn't the first time I was bringing up these concerns. But, they were always just like disregarded, or, they would say like, oh, well, think about it, but then don't. Or basically like a few times I heard like, well, you just got to deal with it. Like this is how it is. And I'm just like, it might be a little bit of PTSD from like constantly having like my feelings just like invalidated or dismissed in my relationship. But even more than that, knowing that it's not going to change. They're doing it now. And, this is supposed to be the quote unquote honeymoon phase. This is where they're supposed to be showing me their best sides. And inevitably, naturally, things just deteriorate. Like, people get more comfortable. So I'm like, oh, if y'all are dismissing me now,
it's only going to get worse.
It's only going to get worse.
It's crazy the parallels we can draw between careers and relationship, entrepreneurship and a relationship, business ownership and self-employment.
They're all the same.
Like self-awareness and like all of this stuff, it really is the same. But and you know what? Just frankly and transparently, I also don't like the overuse of the word narcissist. Though we have experienced people who are textbook narcissists, then everybody else has their traits, because there's a spectrum of everything, right? Yeah. Especially as a mental health professional. But I think that the most important thing to learn as women, as people in a relationship with people who have narcissistic tendencies, falls back on that self-awareness, right? Because regardless of who they are, you needed to have this level of self-awareness and you didn't have it. So even if you met somebody who wasn't a narcissist. So I'm curious about you growing up. I learned a lot about narcissism, and then I also learned a lot about empaths. And I learned that I might even be an empath myself, right? But I didn't know that growing up. When you were growing up and as you were like raised, were you like, well, let's start with the dynamic. Like, what was the dynamic of like your relationship with as a child, and then like with your parents? Are you the oldest? Do you have brothers?
I am exactly in the middle. 3 older, 3 younger.
Cool. 7 siblings.
7 in total. And so I have just like classic middle child syndrome, in the sense that like I am okay doing my own thing, being by myself. Like, you know, middle child is like stereotypically the one that's like flees the coop early. That's the one that's gonna, you know, be so different from the rest of the family. I can entertain myself, like, because I'm in a weird age where like after me, the next youngest is 7 years younger than me. Okay. And then the next oldest is almost 5 years. So it's like I don't really have anybody like super close in age, and so like I can entertain myself and everything like that. But I did a lot, and then it was during the pandemic too. I did a lot of like introspection and making the connections between like my childhood and the relationship that I found myself in. And I used to think, like, because I worked in sales for so long, I like to consider myself like a baby psychologist. But it's like a lot of these theories that I've never like put into practice. Like, I put in like sales theories and like, you know, behavioral psychology. Like, I use that knowledge to
close.
Yeah. But you know, everything just like stems from your childhood. And my ex was my mother and my father rolled into one. And my parents were divorced growing up. After all them, whatever. They don't make no sense, but they crazy too, so everybody's crazy. It comes a point,
aren't we?
Yeah. It comes a point where you realize that, like, first of all, your parents are human. They're not like Superman. And then after that, it's like, oh, my parents are crazy. Like,
okay, there's something there.
But my mother, I grew up primarily with my mother, because when my parents were divorced, they are in different states. So I spent a couple years with my dad, but most times with my mom. And we would spend like holidays and Christmases and everything with my dad and his side of the family, just because of the distance. But my mom was, and I hate to like play the violin here, but my mom, as I'm realizing now, was just very emotionally abusive to me. And I played the role of like the scapegoat. And my theory is that my older brother, the one that was close in age to me, 2 years older than me, he died when I was young of cancer. And so he died when I was 3. And so, you know, they say like if there's like a lot of stress or something in the household, that like breaks the like the bonding on like a biological level between like mother and child. And then my parents had gotten divorced like shortly after that because the stress of like my brother's death. But you got to think, from the time I was like 1, you know, they were battling this sickness with my brother, so it was already like stress, and you got an infant and you got to take care of that, and then you're having marital problems and a sick child, and then my brother dies, my parents get divorced. My mom said she was in a deep depression for years and years and years until the next child was born. But like, you know, on a spiritual level, like I'm young, but there was always been a disconnect between me and my mother. And then when she had, you know, my next younger sibling, it's kind of like that kind of like is what snapped her out of it, because the next one was like a boy, and she felt like it was a
lifeline or something.
And it just like after that it was all good. But I think because me and my mom never ever bonded, like I never felt like other people feel about their moms, like, oh, I love my mom, and I don't feel like she ever felt that love for me, like deep, you know, it's my mom, I love her, blah, and vice versa. But like and I just feel like she used to just take all of her frustrations out on me versus the other children, because it's like this is my theory, at least, that you know, I need an outlet for something, and I just feel like my existence was just like burdensome at that point, because I was like a toddler and I was needy, and my mom is like, I can't get a break, like my husband is gone and my child is gone, and you know, the other siblings aren't big enough to do that much helping, and then, you know, later my father was like on drugs and stuff, because he got into drugs after, you know, my brother got sick. And so it was like the disconnect from my father just being there, like not being there really, you know, even though he was there, but like not really, because of like his mental wasn't there. And then my mom was just you know, angry and hateful and spiteful, and still is. And so it was like, oh, I find a person. And the way that I used to feel growing up was that I was absolutely crazy, because it was a lot of gaslighting, it was a lot of manipulating the situation, it was a lot of accusations, it was a lot of whatever. And I used to be like, how are y'all getting this from this? Like, you know, just. And so, of course, I'm going to find myself in a relationship that mimics those same like patterns from childhood.
And you know what else is big about that is, because when we come from these like family dynamics that isolate us, and we feel like, okay, let me just get my sanity together, then we create this lone wolf, you know, kind of environment, which really allows another person to create that additional crazy. It's like from the frying pan into the fire. So because we've developed these ways of life that makes things like healthy for us. And what I'm thinking about as an entrepreneur is like being self-sufficient and like being super focused on your own thing. You can get your work done, you can get your client work done, all of that. But then you find yourself escaping that family relationship and then finding someone else who kind of attaches to your energy, and then things start to become a distraction again. So it's like constantly relearning that, which brings us to this third experience, which you go on and you talk about like the self-awareness that comes, which is amazing. I don't know why life has to be that way either. But the lessons that come from, I do agree. It, you know, sometimes you do have to turn your anger into gratitude, and sometimes that is the way you do it. Honestly and truly,
that's the only way I figured out.
I think that you have shown really tangible ways that a person can make decisions even when they agonize. The way that you can turn anger into gratitude, the way that you can truly learn from some situations and not be sore about you know, a childhood situation, but to realize what it was and still be successful in entrepreneurship. Honestly and truly, I'm like listening to like your story, and you also said that this next go round into entrepreneurship is going to be different. So like as I'm listening to your personal development, your relationship development, all the things that you've experienced in corporate and in entrepreneurship, now that we're thinking about the things that you are grateful for, when you say I'm going into entrepreneurship again and it's going to be different, what does that look like, and what is for you? Really,
it's going into it. I'm more so treating my business now as something to invest in, an asset, and so like other things I've learned over the pandemic is assets are things that make you money, period. Liabilities are things that cost you money, period. And you can only invest in assets. And so it's like, you know, assets are vehicles for like making more money without your involvement. Sorry, I meant to put that in. Assets are things that make you money, without your involvement, or like can make you passive income. And it's not that I'm like, I want to be removed from my business, but like initially when I even got into just this area of like entrepreneurship or freelancing or whatever it was more so like a job that I created for myself. And this time around, and it was because working for a corporate, I mean, they did have more money, so it's not like they were just like didn't spend money on anything, but and I just like, I did see like, you know, I can hire somebody to do that. I can hire somebody to do this. I can invest, you know, more money in this. And so now, instead of working so much in the business, it's me taking a step back and seeing what the business needs and me supplying the business with everything that it needs so that it could, you know, essentially sustain itself and create like passive income for me. And when I say passive income, it's not like no work, but it's just like you want to set up the infrastructure for things to kind of run without you. So, you know, that's where I am now. So it's like, I hate social media, but I've hired somebody to do social media for my business. So it's like, now I can have that off my plate. And then, you know, you find yourself procrastinating, not you as in you, but you as in general people, when it's like something that you feel like is going to take a lot out of you, or it's difficult, or you just really don't want to do. And I find myself just not doing stuff because I don't want to do it. And I'm like, you know what? I know you got to do some things you don't want in life, but like if I could hire somebody to do social media, then I will not procrastinate on other things, because it's also like how you do anything is how you do everything. And so when you get into this, like everything is a habit. So if you get into a habit of procrastinating on, say, like social media, that is going to trickle into other areas of your life. So it's like, let me remove that obstacle, hire somebody for social media, you know, like hire another backup designer, never have a single point of failure. If I'm sick, then who do I have to call on very quickly? And you know, so that's kind of my approach now. And just, you know, I want to, before it was just like, before my goal was like, I just want to make $10,000 a month. I can do that with 4 or 5 clients a month. I can do that. Now it's like, I mean, the money part is always an incentive, but now it's like, I want to create like a little more impact. So now I want to have like a bigger space where people can come and they can create their content, where we can get everything that they need for their websites, where, you know, maybe people can take some financial classes or business classes and just create more of a community. And I'm so sick of everything being like online. So I'm like, I want to be in person. I want to have like a studio space of some sort. And just to be able to like service more people, and especially my people, my people, my Black folks, you know, because I feel like we are stuck on this cycle of exactly what I was doing. Like, you can't pass down, I cannot pass down to my children, or sell it for that matter, a business where I am doing everything. It's not an asset. It's not going to make me money in the long run. Like, because even though it's making me, even though the business is making money, as in it's paying me a salary, it's like my salary is really an expense. So for the business, so it's not really,
that's good. My salary is an expense for the business. Yeah. So your children would be inheriting an expense.
I mean, that's what it is. So it's like, ooh, so let me, you know, just kind of just fill it out a little differently. So you can have something to pass on, and really at this point, is really have something to sell, because I want to make an impact. I want to build a community, and I want to really, you know, help my people, and not just like, you know, with financial stuff, but just also like mindset stuff. I feel like, I mean, you can hear I'm always like quoting stuff, like, you know, I've got quotes for days, but it's like, those are like some like driving principles. And sometimes it's like, things are so obvious, they seem so obvious after the fact, where you'd say like, oh, why didn't I think of that? And I feel like a lot of families, you know, were like mine growing up, where there was a lot of stress and instability. Like, we grew up in the hood, like bars on the window, like they're shooting outside. We got bunk beds, but all the kids are sleeping on the floor tonight because they're shooting outside. So it's like, ain't nobody talking about financial freedom and the smart way to invest. Like everybody thinks like, oh, just buying a house, but is your house making you money? Like, I mean, from a financial standpoint, it's not an asset. I'm not saying that it's not valuable. Like if you could raise your family there, but it's not an asset. Don't kid yourself. You are spending money on it. It's not an asset until you sell it. And then when you think about all of those other costs, but it's just like you have like these big ideas that like once you really break them down, are not really good for our community, especially we are starting way behind the goalposts. So that's kind of like where I am with business now. Like, okay, it's money, yes, but it's also like impacts. But I also eventually want to sell the business because I don't want to, I don't want to do just like this one thing forever. And, I just want to live a full, rich life. And so it's like rich as in like not just like financially, but rich as in rich in experiences and stuff.
Love.
Exactly. So that's what I'm on. Like, let me run his business and find me. Actually, I don't even know if I want a husband. I mean, maybe I want a husband. I don't know.
It's okay. TBD. What I do see is that on everything with the social media that I do see you actually doing, I am enjoying like the budding of like your new self and the new identity and you loving yourself. I think the last thing I saw was you like practicing your like split in the air, and I was like, listen, remind me, I need to get on my mat today because that is the life that I live. And I think that work and play is like, that is the ideal. But it's the balance that really can happen, and with more self-awareness and understanding how we own our time, all these things that you mentioned, I think we can get there. Yeah. And I think that we can be present in that working and play spirit.
Absolutely. There's this concept. I'm sorry, I'm always quoting other people. Do I have any original ideas? Probably not.
Are there any original ideas? I thought I had one the other day. I was like, dang, I had a book somewhere.
There is something in ecology called the edge effect. And it's basically where different ecosystems, wherever they meet, that is where you'll find the most life. So wherever, like a source of water meets a forest meets a grassland, that is where you will see the most diversity, the most richness of life. Like if you go deep into the forest, you've got like plants and stuff, but they are shaded by the trees. So it's not a lot of life. It's called the edge effect. And so when you apply, and I realize the older I get, like nature is the blueprint for everything. So when you think about like a rich life, you want it to be filled, you want to be healthy, you want it to be filled with, love and laughter, and you also want to make some money and you want to have purpose. And so the objective is to, like you say, like work and play, find a way to merge all of those things, because that is how you're going to get, the richest life. Is there a way that you can stay healthy while you work? Is there a way that you can expand your social circle or your relationships at work or at play or whatever? Try to make them all merge.
You're the first person who has like described my vision with your words. Everybody's like, yeah, you gotta have a balance. And I'm like, no, I'm not talking about balance. I'm talking about life. Like, I want my life to look like this. And you literally just like embodied it with your words.
That's my that is the pinnacle of like life that I'm trying to like reach. They say like the 4 pillars of health are like drink water, get enough sleep, get enough exercise, eat healthy. I feel like the 4 pillars of a good life are be healthy, make money, maintain good relationships, and find your purpose and fulfillment. So have all of those merge, and that's a good life. That's a good life. Like, what else is there to life if you have those 4 elements? Like,
you got it. You got it. She understood the assignment. This has been awesome talking with you.
Likewise.
I have been excited about this conversation, like, for all of the reasons that we just talked. It's the personal connection. Like, we only had a 5-minute conversation when we met, and I think that from that moment we've been like, okay girl, it's just been all ever since. And so I love every single pivot that we took in this conversation, and I think that but I really think that we can like take nuggets away. Like, I can't wait till I chop this thing up, because there are so many different nuggets that we can make to live the life that we want to live.
That's what it's about. That's literally what it's about.
The women women and men, I always have to remember that my life is not the only example of like, me as a woman is not the only example of like living our self-development, living our self-actuality. And there are men who are struggling with, agonizing with like, yo, the future of the company, or the future of like hiring in this company. I'm the black, like whatever it is. for you, if you were to talk to someone who is on their journey and they're trying to figure out, like, how do I make this decision? What would be your wisdom? Because we already got the exercise. We're going to use it. That's going to set some folks free. But what would the wisdom be that you would tell somebody if they're trying to figure out how to live their best life?
Listen, I know. Listen, they're cliches for a reason. Mm-hmm. They are cliches because they're true. Mm-hmm. I feel like...
Just sit there.
Really. I feel like it's not unique advice, but it starts with mindset. Like, you have to have like the right mindset, and not just like a positive. Okay, I'm gonna be more specific. Mindset, but specifically identity, because how you identify is what drives your behavior subconsciously. It's like your identity is number one, and then it's, your habits, your discipline all only falls to the level of your systems that you have. And when you have systems in place, they eventually evolve into like habits where they're just like subconscious. But all of your behavior is determined by your identity and how you think about yourself. And whether that identity is like, when it comes to like an entrepreneur, your identity doesn't necessarily have to be like, I'm an entrepreneur per se, but your identity has to be of something that is productive and conducive to that. So like, I was like not making money as a web designer for a long time until, and I know this is so like cheesy, until I started introducing myself as a web designer. And then, you're only going to change your subconscious by repetition. So now, instead of when people ask me, what do you do? It's not like, oh, I'm a, bartender and I do websites on the side. It's like, I'm a web designer. And then once my language changed, it changed my identity into where naturally my behavior, followed that, and to do the things that need to be done. And so it was like, maybe not identity of an entrepreneur, but I have the identity of somebody that like works hard. So like, if you take that on as like, oh, I know I'm tired, but I'm a person that works hard. My identity is that of being a lazy person. So I find shortcuts to everything, but it is what it is. My identity is somebody that's healthy. So like, where when I'm stressed, I go for a run. Mm-hmm. That's part of my identity now. But if your identity is somebody that's like, oh, I'm so fat, I've been fat my whole life, like you don't have the identity of an athlete or something like that, you're going to behave differently. Because how they say, like, it's so hard to change yourself. Like, you ever are sitting there like, why don't I do the things that I know I need to do? Right. Why? But then you think about your behavior, even bad behavior serve you. And more times than not, they serve like your ego. And so like, I mean, just think of really like, I used to like cry at the drop of a dime. Like I just like could not control my tears. Like whenever I was in confrontation with somebody, I would just start to tear up, like until like well into my 20s. And I'm like, what is wrong with me? I'm not even sad. I'm not even intimidated. Like, what is it? But when I like go back and I'm like, how has this behavior served me in the past? Like that's the way I used to be able to get attention because, everybody was always crying about something, about, my brother dying and stuff like that. So it's like, oh, if I cry, then that'll give me some attention. That'll be a release of some sort. But once I was able to identify, like, this is not really serving me, and I can see, like, where this, like, trigger comes from, it just, like, went away overnight, like, literally. And so it's like, you have to understand, like, your bad behaviors, they serve you in some way to either perpetuate this identity that you have for yourself. So you just got to change your identity in how you speak to yourself when you're alone, what you say about yourself when you're alone, and just be cognizant of really be cognizant of the language that you use and the way you speak to yourself, and be like, would I be speaking to, and I know this is so cheesy, but like, would I be speaking to my best friend like that? Would I be like, you're such a stupid bitch, or not stupid bitch,
yeah,
oh, you're so stupid, like how could you make that stupid mistake? Or like, oh, so like that was so embarrassing, you should be so, you're not gonna be in your best friend's face like, oh, you embarrassed yourself, girl. Like that's not the way you speak to yourself. That's good. And all of that contributes to your mindset. So that's a roundabout way to say, like, be cognizant of your thoughts. Okay, let's make it succinct. Be conscious of your thoughts. Catch yourself in quote unquote negative thoughts. Not even negative thoughts. Catch yourself in when you have thoughts that don't really serve your purposes here. So That's it.
I think that's good. I think that's good. It starts with mindset, identity, getting into your identity, identifying with the identity, and then talking to yourself as if you have that identity.
Yeah. And I feel like it's more than just affirmations. Like people be like, oh, you say your affirmations, but it's really more of a like, who am I? Who do I want to be? But you have to also have something to grab onto in reality. Otherwise, it's going to feel like you're lying to yourself. But
that's good. You got to take action. Action plus like affirming yourself. And the thing is, we've formalized affirmations so much that people save affirmations for one moment in time, and they forget about it. They're dummies the rest of the day. It's like, no. These affirmations are supposed to remind you when something does happen. I am not stupid. I am enough. I am aware.
Exactly.
And we have to remember that when you're talking to yourself as a person who's like, I'm not fat. I'm a hard worker. What did you say? I'm a hard worker. I get stuff done. That's an affirmation in the moment that's needed, right? And so I think that all of these things that you're saying are in practice, as opposed to this formal moment in time. You're literally becoming it. I really, really, really have enjoyed this conversation. Your being is amazing. So one day, when you come back onto the podcast and the second round of entrepreneurship looks like whatever in 5 years, 2 years, 3 years, I'm excited.
18 months. 18 months is a good time frame. It's not too long. It's longer than a year, but it's not so far in the future where it's attainable. So I do like 18-month goals.
I love it. Okay.
So
all right, well, y'all
check me out in 18 months.
Listen, we're going to do one of these again, okay? So for the folks who are listening, and thank you for that words, I think that somebody can actually really receive that. How can they find you if they want to get connected with you, if they need your services, or if they want to follow your journey?
So, listen, I change my Instagram handle all the time. My personal right now is Joy in Pure Form, but my company is Urban Crafts Media. So, urbancraftmedia.com, Urban Crafts Media on Instagram, and I mean, that's pretty much it. Go online, schedule a consultation. Eventually, we're going to offer like more services as I bring more people on board.
Real quick, before we get out of here, and this could be the closeout, because I was actually curious about this from a business perspective, because but then I understood like it's not just web design. But for folks who are like, listen, I don't have a website. I've never had a website. I've had a successful business for so long. What's the benefit of like your services from a holistic perspective?
Well, number one, just the simple fact that it's 2022. If you don't have a website, then you just lose a lot of credibility. So that's like obvious from just like an optics perspective. But if you are in business for 5 years and you don't have a website, then you can answer the question yourself, because that's kind of how I chose my niche, because everybody had the same problems. Like I am spending so much time on like manual tasks, and things slip through the cracks, and it's like human error, and when you don't have good systems, then you can't hire effectively, you can't really expand your business. So that's why I actually really don't work with startups too much, because they don't really, because even more than just like advice, you have to make sure people are implementing the things that you do. And a lot of times startups just don't understand the importance until they're 5 years in. And it's like, I haven't gone on vacation in 3 years because I have so much work to do because I'm not organized. Because really what it is high level organization. So, I mean, but if you are a startup, I worked with a few startups but they come into the mindset of like, I want to do it right the first time, because again, pay now or pay later, but you're gonna pay, either, whether it's to redo it or fix it or whatever, or you lose out on a lot of revenue, just revenue opportunities. So I mean, if a startup comes to me and is like, I'm gonna listen to what you need, I'm ready to pay you, then I'll work with them. But it's just an easier sell a lot. It's not even a sell, they come to me because
they have the issue.
They've got issues.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. So one more time, your business handle, your personal handle?
Yeah, personal handle is Joy, Joy, Joy in Pure Form. I don't know why I like stumbled when I looked at him. Joy in Pure Form is my Instagram, but sometimes it goes back between that and like Joy the Web Designer. But my company handle is Urban Craft Media, and my website is urbancraftmedia.com. So
there you have it, guys. Well, listen, if you guys need a web designer or somebody just to get your back end organized, you already know where to find her. Thank you so much for sharing your personal journey with us.
You're welcome.
And I can't wait for us to just see how this all like just pans out. But until next time, y'all, thank y'all for listening. Thank you so much
for having me.
Yes. Until next week, peace out.